Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. I'm Brian. I'm the host of the Left of Greg show. You're going to be watching the video version of our audio podcast. Please, guys, if you like the video, like it, subscribe to the channel. There's going to be more content on there if you're already a subscriber, and a better way for us to get you guys some more stuff. If you have any questions or comments, go ahead and leave them below. Check out our links down below to get a hold of us and to actually find out more places where you can get more information about this. Please like and subscribe. Follow us on Facebook at HBPRNA. Remember, all these cases that we discuss and all the discussions that we have are through the lenses of what we call human behavior, pattern recognition, and analysis. So please like it, share it, tell your friends about it, and we hope you enjoy the show. All right, Greg, so we'll go ahead and get started today's podcast, which we are also streaming live on Facebook. For those of you listening to the recording, you can always follow me on Facebook, and when we do some of these, we do live stream, because there can sometimes be discussion, sometimes not, where people hop on. But today's topic, kind of general overarching theme, is lack of identity or insider threat. And we'll get in and explain exactly what we mean by that. But before we get started, Greg, did you want to give some shout outs or?
Well, first a comment. I'm not used to going live, but I am used to live streaming. My prostate, I'm getting a little older, especially after a couple hours.
Yeah.
It's my, I believe it's my niece. I don't know the
family
familiar relationship. No, I know who she is. It's just I don't know where that falls. She could be my cousin, my uncle. It's Bridget Williams' birthday, my brother Brian and his wife Lynn's daughter. And so shout out to Brig, happy birthday. And then for the folks that are following us, literally following us, Marin, that are following us around, reminder that for the 4th of July, we'll be appearing at the Colfax Motor Lodge in Denver, so they can see us there live as well. That's all I have.
Okay, so on that, 10% discount if you're signed up at the website.
If you're signed up.
So just for everyone listening too, we are recording this morning of Thursday, June 25th. But recent news, this kid by the name of Ethan Melzer, a U.S. soldier who just got arrested by FBI and Army, did a big investigation, would be considered what's called an insider threat. He was working with some, we'll get into the groups he was working with, some neo-Nazi, fascist, all kinds of different ideals in their group, with giving them locations, wanting to have an attack on his Army unit or planning an attack on his own unit. And so we classify that as an insider threat. But before we get into that case and how this stuff works out, Greg, I kind of want to just take a couple minutes to define how we look at what an insider threat is, because that term gets used a lot, but it's an umbrella term, and actually a lot of things can fall under an insider threat. In fact, most of the things that are going to harm you or potentially be a problem in your life or be a problem somewhere are generally going to fall under the category of an insider threat. We actually have far fewer external threats, right, than we do internal threats. So let's start there, and maybe could you give your definition of what that would mean in general, and we'll give some examples along the way too.
I'll street it up, and then I want you to narrow in on exactly what you mean about how broad of focus this topic can be. First of all, if we were looking at it as a continuum, external threats are nebulous, but they're so far distant and so unlikely to occur with us, while an insider threat is that 5 and 25. It's that close target that's right up on us. So a long time ago when I did the W's and the H, the who, what, when, where, why, and how, the who would be anybody with access. If a person has access to you, to your records, to your information, to your kids, it can be an insider threat. And the idea is that they'll have a special relationship because they're trusted in your infrastructure. They're trusted with your computers or with your family. And the what would be anybody that is displaying, for example, the what could be a domestic violence insider threat in the family. It could be a disgruntled employee, current or former. It could be somebody displaying out of character behavior, distinguished sudden behavior changes, destructive or suspicious behavior. When we were doing an airline, one of the things we were trying to tell people is, listen, people don't normally walk around off duty with their uniform on, and they don't double bump common access cards, those type of things. So those are the type of things that you should be looking for insider threat, anywhere that they could gain an advantage. Hold on, and just to
Yeah.
make sure that we got the overall why, grievance, revenge, ideology, honor killing, terrorism, simple crime, money, drugs, traffic, human smuggling, and when.
I just don't like you, whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And then when it can be planned, it can be spontaneous, or it can be something that's opportunistic. And you and I were talking just as you were clicking us into this live broadcast, Brian, is that this was Meltzer was very opportunistic. He was a fart in a blender
Yeah.
looking for a place to land.
So
But so those are the basic overarching topics.
right. No. So that's the idea. Is that an insider threat could be a lot of things, and
Mm-hmm.
like you just brought up the perfect point, is because a criminal or someone who wants to do you harm or con you or whatever, or be in an abusive relationship with you,
Yep.
whatever it is, right? They need access, and that's the thing, is that our inner circle, the people we know or people who get or we give access to, are the real threats, and it's kind of hard for us to see that sometimes, right? Because
Yes.
like we even classify suicide as an insider threat. Now that person's
Precisely.
not a threat to others; they're a threat to themselves. But they're part of the community. So and the reason why we classify it in certain ways, because you even got folks who are following along. Right now, even one person said, "Hey, 93% of homicide victims know their attacker." I was forensics for LAPD. Like, yes, that's what we're
Insider
getting
threat,
at,
baby.
is that
Exactly.
we keep looking up and out, right? We keep saying, "Hey, the threat's going to come up from out there," and there's political groups are really and political groups are really good at getting people to think that way too. But the idea is we got to look down and in sometimes and look at what's around us, and it's like a two-way street, right? For me, if I'm looking to protect myself, I have to look at insider threats as a major issue. And then if
Sure.
you were that person, that you're the criminal, right? From their perspective, they have to do the same thing if they want a victim, right? They have to have access to the victim. So I always like to we try to show two sides of that coin. And so, here's the issue with an insider threat, because those threats are so much more, my opinion would be that they're so much more damaging to
Yes.
you and the community and your family. Because why? Because it came from inside, usually a trusted person. So think of the high school coach
Psychological,
that's
sociological.
molesting the kids,
Yep.
or the other one that popped in my head when I was reading the Meltzer one was the doctor for the girls U.S. women's gymnastics team, who is like, I mean, sexually assaulting all these people. So that's a trusted person,
Yes.
that then does harm with, and so that effect is so much greater. That's why you do see a lot of issues where it's like anytime a police officer does something that's outside of what they're supposed to do, it's national attention. Why? Because
Yes.
they're the ones that are supposed to be protecting us, not hurting us. So it's worse, right? When a criminal does it to
Or a
someone,
priest or a doctor.
yeah,
Spot
exactly. It's the
on.
same.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. So you're in a position of trust within a community, and that's why it's so much worse. So I just want to make sure that umbrella is big, so everyone sees it. What the threat is
Huge.
really, it's an insider threat, right? So there's a bunch of people
So
responding too, who are
Brian,
saying,
we
"Yeah,
have to
I knew the person that assaulted me. I knew this." Like it's that's where it's going to come from. So
we have a narrow scope of focus because we don't study our own history. So insider threats aren't new, and they're not going to go away.
right,
Judas Iscariot was the one that betrayed Jesus. That's an insider threat, led to the crucifixion. Julius Caesar, his two best friends, Cassius and Brutus, were the ones that plotted and planned against him, and ultimately killed him in front of the Senate with a bunch of other people. When we talk about Meltzer in the original article, Brian, maybe you could put that up later on the site so people know what we're talking about. The idea is, immediately when I read that, you thought of a different direction. I
yeah,
thought of Bill Kreutzer, William Kreutzer Jr., U.S. Army, killed an officer and shot 18 other people back in the 90s at Fort Bragg.
right,
Staged it, set it up, planned it. This isn't opportunistic like Meltzer's. This is a planned attack, and said, "Hey, I'm going to show everybody what's going on," and showed up on the parade deck with a couple of different rifles, and decided that he was going to shoot up the parade deck on that day. So these type of attacks, Brian, the person doing them has an advantage, and it's an unfair
hmm
advantage. It's like cheating at a game of cards, and the idea is they can be spotted if you have an architecture in place to take a look at that. And don't just say they're insider threats and, hey, when my wife got beat up, it was the person closed the door. Go that one step further, Brian, and say up and out and down and in is critically important. But there's a structure to how these attacks begin, how they mature, and then ultimately how they take place.
Okay, good. And that's a good point, because again, like, this is about school shooters, perfect example, right? They're an insider threat. Where do they go? They go to their school. So a lot of people are like, well, hey, where does this come from? Look, if I am going to lash out, whether I feel I was wronged, or I have mental health issues, or something happened, I have to do it someplace that I know or am comfortable with, or understand. I'm not going to go to some far off place that I've never been to and plan an attack. It has to be something that I know or understand. So that might differ whether your ideological intent is terrorism versus just crime. But
what's your end state? Right.
Yeah, but it's about the end state. So I think that's a good kind of general background on how we look at an insider threat and everything that it can be classified under there, right? And how most things are, and that's the issue. I know we have a lot of times with different people or organizations that take a certain approach to this stuff, where we say, well, one, you're at bang thinking, and two, you're trying to give everyone this fear of you're out on the street and someone's going to attack you, and that's almost never going to happen, statistically speaking. Almost never, right? But the fact of someone or have an affiliation with, whether that's a family member or someone like you just said who has access to your credit card, you know what I mean? Which could have been the server at your, whatever it is. Those are the places we need to be worried about, right? Those are the seams and gaps. So let's jump into this case, Greg. And I guess I'll give a little bit of background about this kid, Ethan Meltzer, who was in the Army, was in contact with a number of, we'll bring up the one group, which is is it the 09A, or is that a 0? I don't know.
And it's from like 0, London, so we'll have to ask. We'll ask that. And please, if you're going to have a terror and a hate group, make it something easy that we can look up and find. Don't make it so hard with all the squiggles. It's not a flipping password for your LinkedIn account.
So anyway, he was affiliated with this group, and then he was in contact with them, and then was attempting to give his military unit's location and plan some sort of attack. Again, I didn't get a chance to deep dive all the details. Not that you really
plenty.
Not that you really need to.
With this asshole, you got plenty, Brian.
So
exactly.
The interesting thing is, this kid Meltzer, who was doing this, was taking his I guess people call it self-radicalizing, right? Or getting information from, in doing research and supposedly in contact with ISIS or Muslim extremist groups, but also this group that he's in, who they believe in everything and nothing, or I don't know what their thing is. They're definitely anti-Semitic. They're Nazism. They like,
but they like Jews, right?
They like paganism. They like satanic worship. So to me, it's like, a bunch of people with no identity all got together and said, "What are we doing?" Everyone got a little vote. Well, can we all
remember quinoa? We love that. We love that too.
No.
We're not too hot on the Jews. I don't know, but kale. Like, these guys are mixed up like a fart in a blender.
Boo kale or yay kale. Like, what
exactly.
do you? What is it? Yeah. So anyway, the point I'm bringing up, I'm making light of it. It's not that it isn't serious. It's just it's a low level of organization. It's clearly a low level of.
Do you know why he reached out to them?
So why do you have a group full of people with no identity? All right. So normally groups have especially when you're that fundamentalist view of whatever your beliefs are. I don't care what it is, right? Whether that's a religious thing, it's a political thing. When you're on that level, hey, this is what usually you generally have a clearly defined idea of who the enemy is, right? These guys are all over the place, which is just like, it's a group identity comprised of people with no identity.
I'm begging for you to reach out to the Southern Poverty Law Center to protect us, because we've just insulted all these hate groups with all their deep thinkers, true. And so they're going to be after us. And remember, that's the Colfax Motor Lodge on the 4th of July in Denver. The kiss my ass, all of you. The idea is very simple, Brian. This kid was looking for a place to land. Somebody answered his email. He probably sent thousands of emails out to groups, including farmersonly.com, looking for Confederates, looking for people that were like him. And he stumbles on we hate unicorns, but we love steel wool. we're still ambivalent about Kale. He stumbles on this group and goes, "This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to hatch this master plan."
Right.
First of all, everybody's listening, and everybody thought he's a mixed up kid, and he's got a lot of hate, and he's got a lot of fascination for suicidal ideation and homicidal fascination that he wants to act out. So he starts acting it out in writing. You call it radicalization. It's the kid needed some. He would have been in a
Yes.
shitty gang in
Yeah.
Chicago,
Yeah.
right? He would have been part of, you know, the Gap counterculture people that smoke on the loading dock, because he
Yeah.
wanted an identity, Brian. That's what he was missing. So he was
Right.
searching for an identity, and this was opportunistic. It gave him an opportunity. So Kreutzer was planning on killing everybody and talked about it all the time. This kid is sort of suckered into it, going, "Hey, I don't have an identity. They'll provide me with one, and I really don't have any attention focused on me. But when I start talking about radical and extremism and killing people, guess what? All of a sudden, I got a packed house, a captive audience." That's what the lure is, Brian. We are so fragile emotionally. Listen, if we bust out of an egg, that means life. If we bust into an egg, that means death. This kid has no idea which direction to go. And guess what? He gets served up this manic one on a website of extremism.
Yeah, and that's a that's a good point. When you said, I wrote it down, looking for a place to land. This is how
Yep.
most people fall into these different extremist organizations, right? And I don't care where on the political or religious spectrum that is.
Doesn't matter.
Those extremists or very very fundamentalist groups, that's people looking for an identity. So the idea is, and if correct me if I'm misunderstanding what you're saying too, but he could have fallen into any group, like meaning
Yes.
whoever would have accepted him first. Meaning if
He'd have been a loyal minion from that moment forward.
that's what I'm saying. If the local Christian outreach group had walked up
Yep.
to him and said, "Hey, we got this," it could have gone that direction, right?
Could have gone mom and dad. Could have gone local church. Could have gone, the local Red Cross, Brian. He was searching for something. He felt empty. And guess what? When we're walking around with an empty cup, some stuff spills into it that we didn't intend. It has unintentional consequences as well.
Okay, so that's a big part. Anytime anyone gets in to a group or situation where things start to escalate, and this isn't exactly what I thought it was. And we've all had that.
Rapidly.
That was me. We all get that experience, of course, in the military, where you're like, "Oh wow, okay, this is real now." Yeah, no, this is what I signed up for. But okay, well, now we're in it.
Exactly.
Like but that can happen in these groups too. Now, because
Yep.
one thing, he's looking for a friendship. He's looking for people that think like him, that
Yes.
will accept him.
Homophily.
And then
I need to find the nest where similar birds are. That's me. Birds of a feather. Yeah.
So I think that's and remember, all humans do this. We all have
Everyone.
our group. So everyone, especially following along on Facebook Live, that is sending me requests to join a Facebook group. It's the same thing. Now it's not as extreme, and you might not be planning to hurt or kill or do anything wrong or illegal, but the idea of that group identity is the same. So how does it then that this kid goes, instead of just wanting to be a member of a group, which he is because he joined the army, which similar thing, like we
It's a
do
group.
the gang analogy.
Yep.
Is a gang is a gang is a gang. Your clique, your set, your Facebook group, it's no different than a gang. Now your intent and what your behavior is different, but
Yes.
from a sociological and psychological standpoint of
It's the
wanting
same.
to fit in, it's the same thing, right?
Same
Big
thing.
picture, right? So don't, anyone listening, don't confuse saying one's they're the exact same thing. No, some of it's illegal or immoral or unethical, and there's different changes there. But the idea of
But the
wanting
brain
to
chemistry is identical.
the brain
That's the
chemistry
point.
is
Yes.
identical.
Yes.
So I will also would say that some of these people in the group, because there's dynamics in any group, and it can be broken down, right? So look at even just, let's say, the entire just United States, right? Everyone falls in a certain area politically, but also meaning what you're willing to do and participate. Some people are just like, yeah, man, look, I vote when it's time to vote, and that's it. I don't get involved in the discussion. Some people are, a very politicalist. Some people are willing to go out and protest and join and help. Some people are willing to knock door on door, right? So we all fall in there somewhere. So even though I might be in the same group as you, Greg, you might be more willing to carry out something. So what is it about how certain people in those groups then are the ones who are actually, we call it, some people want their say, some people want their way.
Yeah.
How do they actually get him to do it?
So
How does he become the one that, oh, I'm going to actually act on this rather than we're all going to get on the message boards and type?
So let's do an LCD. Let's do a lowest common denominator way of looking at it, Brian. You're a structure guy, so am I. Let's take a look at a comparative. So you and I are both fathers, okay? But we're different kind of fathers. I'm the hands-off father. I've got a daughter in Alabama that's a doctor that I rarely talk to and I rarely see because I screwed up that relationship like it was free. I've got a son that's got 90 jobs, the 89 of them to make sure he stays away from me. You know, that's the, and I run every morning. What am I running from, Brian? You, however, are the perfect parent. You're the father that's member of the local T-ball league. You are going to make sure that your daughter's going to be an Eagle Scout. You're working towards all of these things in your community. So even at that level, Brian, where it's a loose band and only by definition we both happen to be fathers, there are distinctions.
Right.
And some people will fall into one of those camps and some people won't. And here you got a kid that either because he was lazy or because he was searching or because he was bullied or because he felt different, that was out looking for structure. He was looking for organization. He didn't have any. He had a low level of sophistication, but a low level of organization. And that makes you Johnny the Garden Slug. You don't get anywhere in life, right? You're in neutral and you're flooring it in the car and wondering why you're burning up all the fuel, but you're not getting anywhere. So your brain is still functioning with the same onboard hardwiring that it was designed to stay alive when we were in a rapidly evolving ambiguous environments as zygotes back thousands of years ago. And what happened is back then, we interacted with such a small amount of people and survival was so important that each of us had a critical role.
Yeah.
He didn't. He doesn't have a role. He doesn't have an identity. So he needs to make one or he needs to find one. And Brian, we're both surprised when we travel a lot and we see somebody with extreme hair or extreme makeup or something. And they're saying, well, I'm just trying to be different. I'm trying to differentiate myself. I'm trying to have an identity just like all the other people that do that. Brian, we're not sure. We're fragile little egos, just like this kid. So he sends out some messages. His first messages were, why don't you love me? And you know how the internet is just horrible. They poured on, you blow, you suck, you do that. But somebody, Brian, reached out, and maybe it was a pedophile, maybe it was a terrorist, maybe it was just another lonely kid. Do you get what I'm trying to say? And they reached out and they answered him. And the minute they did that, all of a sudden the pleasure centers in his brain, the fMRI, is kicking with all these Christmas lights flashing, and that kid was hooked. And all it took is a little grooming, Brian. Hey, you matter. Look how much more you could matter if you were part of our group. And tell you what, you wear these boots and this hat and you punch somebody, then you're even more important. Brian, that stuff is flipping addictive. It's like opiate. It's like opium. It's like heroin. People dig that, and they need that. They need an identity. We all need an ecosystem.
So,
and so he had to create one.
So
was ready
on that,
for
just because we have some great comments from people following along on Facebook Live,
Cool.
talking about
Hello, everybody.
different neurocriminology, about there's biology involved in this, right? So just to clear this up,
Absolutely.
right? So some people are more biologically prone to this than others, right? So you're born with a certain, like I always say, you're born somewhere on this scale, and that ain't up to you, right? So and even
you're the crouching guy. Everybody, that evolution scale. Marin's that monkey back there on the left.
I'm
He's
a little bit.
crouch.
I'm like 1 or 2 steps farther along now. It's like maybe 1. I don't know. At least stand a little bit more upright, but the knuckles still drag. They're still on the ground. But someone mentioned, they need an environmental trigger in a lot of situations, especially if they have the genetic components to act on these tendencies. And that's exactly what we're talking about. So if you're already biologically prone to it, that environmental trigger is just what Greg said. There's always something that goes, oh, you know what? And that's enough. But
it could be something simple.
And that person said no because that it won't go on a date with me because
I'm lonely.
Yeah.
Okay. We name it afterwards. We name it incel. Do you get what I'm trying to say?
Yes.
Do you think that you're an asshole in the moment? Very few people know that. So like if you're lonely or if you're poor, I was like, I think I was like 13 and we were doing the Camp Dearborn thing. My dad making the pancakes on the hood of the car. You know what I'm saying? You open it up, the carburetor, and I looked around and I go, holy shit, we're poor. I did not know it up until that point, Brian. So listen, this poor kid and a lot of other poor kids, a lot of people in society. Yes, there's some evil people, but the environmental trigger can be injustice. Yes. Okay. I'll agree with that. But it could be loneliness. It could be boredom. Brian, there are people that have gone out and committed a homicide because they were bored. And that's why, let's see, some great scholars once wrote that an idle mind is idle hands are the devil's workshop. Brian, this is known stuff. So as much as we try to politicize it, as much as we try
Right.
to ramp it up and say you only have to be a PhD to understand this, no, you don't.
It's not.
Anytime you feel
Yeah.
disenfranchised, anytime you feel left out, you're willing to take that chance to be part of a group.
No, and then like you said, a lot of this it comes afterwards when we go down the rabbit hole of what's his motive and the
Yes.
ideology behind it, and this is a growing threat, and then we need to handle that. It's just there's certain groups of people or certain people that are assholes, and guess what? Because of homophily and isopraxism, social mimicry, birds of a feather flock together, right? Assholes are going to find other assholes, right? Good people are going to find other good people, right? So
it's actually a website for, I'm sure, for some of that, but it has nothing to do with this. I think
don't go to that website.
Pornographic. Don't answer those
different,
messages.
Much different. But I just want to give that classification. What we talk about as an insider threat, and where I think clear up some of the confusion is don't look at it as this, oh, we need to get rid of. This is why I was making fun of the group it's a perfect example. It's, hey, we like Nazism, but ISIS is cool with us too. We definitely don't like Jewish people, but paganism is cool. We're gonna have like a rape squad. You're like, there's no ethos.
Exactly.
There's no central theme here that you're working on, which means you put almost zero thought into what your ideology is, and now we're gonna say, hey, these.
But look at the appeal to that.
But right. But that's the idea. Is anything goes, and now someone's gonna come in afterwards and say, hey, this is a really dangerous group. They're a bunch of idiots who are yes, dangerous people
who happen to be in the same room at the same time.
Yeah, and so now we come up with this. Hey, let's come up with this model to analyze it and pass legislation to do this, and we're going. Yep. Hey, we're missing a flipping point here.
Exactly.
You can name this and do a whole dissertation on this, and then next week it's going to be a different group, and the week after that it's going to be a different group. All right, but all of those peoples and all of those groups are, to me, I look at them as they're the same person, right? Meaning you have the same needs, which we all do, but they're taking it to a different level of, oh, I don't fit in anywhere else, but these people will accept me, all right? And that can turn, I'm convinced with a lot of them, like the example I brought up with him was, if it wasn't this group, if he had been approached earlier in life or whatever by a local community outreach from a church, he would have been then the devoted member of that church, and his whole Facebook feed would have been all about everything about Jesus, and that, meaning it's the same thing. You can go either way. So, and someone kind of brought it up here, and that's kind of what I was getting at, sir, is how do we know the difference between someone who's just looking to fit in?
Now we're talking.
That's everyone, and the person who's, I'm going to actually carry out and do this stuff, because again, each case is so dependent. Like this kid, I don't think he partially even almost knew what he was getting himself into. I mean, he did as a conscious adult and legally of age and understanding, but meaning I think he went so far down a rabbit hole to a point where now he has to do something. And I don't know those cases.
But it could have been as simple, Brian, that again, he was looking for a place to land, and he really doesn't value life very much. So he's kind of pseudo-suicidal. So he joins the Army hoping to get deployed, hoping that he gets killed. And you know what? On a path that's not happening fast enough. So I got these other strap hangers. I'm going to link up with their group, and maybe they'll attack me, and that's how I'll be remembered. Don't get into what their reasoning is. Get into what their pre-event indications of violence look like. What does a damaged egg look like compared to all the other eggs that are coming down the line? Or what does that damaged snowflake, how does it fly different than all the other snowflakes that I'm going to make this gosh damn snowman out of? And the problem is, as humans, we have been preconditioned not to see it. Now you got to remember that our environmental triggers, to use one of the caller's mentions, which is spot on, our environmental triggers are always self-preservation and survival oriented.
Right.
And so the problem is when we say, if you see something, say something, nobody tells us what it looks like. We don't have a comparison, a flashcard. And therefore, the threshold is so low that our brain's chemistry doesn't pick up on it. We don't pick up on things that might be a threat. Why do you think it takes us days in a classroom to condition the brain to go, holy crap, there's Waldo? Brian, it takes us time. You know, people go, well, why was it 22 days? It takes 21 days to get your brain into a habit of doing something. So when we were training those people for pre-deployment, Brian, it took that long. It took that long to condition their brain to see anomalous behavior. And still to this day, and you know it because we wrote a lessons learned on it, there's somebody getting stabbed to death in a parking garage, and people continue to walk by. Why? Because their brain chemistry is going, well, this is an anomaly, but somebody else must be just in the wings, ready to take a stand here, you know, and they just keep walking and chopping. So you're assuming that your hardwiring is just like everybody else is on the planet, and you're going to be the guy that comes in or the female that comes in and saves it. It's not so, Brian. We're a bunch of fragile egos bouncing around looking for adhesion to a group or to a set of people.
Yeah, and that goes into, you know, where we get really good at analysis after the fact, and we write all kinds of papers and talk on the news, and then we go down the rabbit hole of trying to explain why this occurred and why they did this
and all the missing pieces, right?
But we're the ones, and it's not that there's something wrong with that. I get it. That's someone's, like any science or any explanation. You're trying to explain a phenomena. You're trying to explain something that a typical person or normal, when we use that in a clinical term, wouldn't understand. So you have to relate it and you go, well, this happened and then this occurred and then this occurred. We're going, that's great for analysis purposes. And there's like 7 people who need to know that stuff and get really good at it, right? And they need to tell us what those things are for dealing with it, I think, from a societal standpoint and how to look at it. But we're about, hey, this is how you understand pre-event indicators. This is how all humans are the same. And that's why I brought up there's some difference in the Facebook group and the group these was texting, the behavior and the rewards.
Now you got Facebook pissed at us too.
Yeah,
that's great. No. There's anybody else out there that wants to
but that I think that does a better job of understanding it, right? To go, all right, well, how do I engage in behaviors that are similar to this individual? And then go, oh, okay, I can see it. Now, I'm not sitting here in my group, I'm talking about sewing or the book club or whatever, and they're talking about hate, death, fear. That's the idea, is what is the intent behind it? The intent in your group is to create a community of like-minded individuals who want to talk about something that you're interested in, right?
And here it just happened to be killing my squad.
And they're doing the same thing. They just it's about, you know, murder, death, kill.
They have somebody bring in the coffee, Brian. When they have the local meetings, they have the thing. Okay, everybody look under your chair. Who's got the 290? Hey, you get the Styr-Og with the
Don't forget, we have our fundraising pancake breakfast this weekend.
And those tickets.
And that's the point. But what's different, and that's the whole idea we're getting at, is those pre-event indicators wait, what's your actual intent here? Because that can become some clear, right, when you get into what they're studying. But how do we go that, you know, it goes back to the person, because you have other people in here bringing up examples of like, hey, you know, is that like the guy who's bullied in high school and then grows up and becomes a cop, and then he bullies people because he has the power, and like that's a narrative. I get it. There are those people,
and it does happen. It does happen. That's why we write songs and books about it, but it's very rare. So look at it this way, Brian. We got human behavior pattern recognition and analysis. Those are the two things that we always try to tell our listeners. What sets us apart from everybody else in this space is that we do both, and we do it better than anybody else in the world. So part 2, Shelley's twin brothers, Uday and Kusei, also known as Scott and Craig, are identical twins, yet they couldn't be more different. But the one passion that they have is sports. So you know me, I don't know crap about sports. And I love playing sports, but I don't know factoids. I don't know all this other stuff. So getting them in the room with me, they're constantly, and they're members of everything. So Craig is more the facts guy. Well, last time he was up to bat, he did this 270 with this and that. And then when you look at Scooter comes into it from, but in his last 3 or 4 times out, you know, he had that uncle that died, and when he went to Jamaica. Okay, so these two guys epitomize human behavior pattern recognition analysis. Because together what they do, Brian, is they predict the outcomes of the game based on historical perspective and health and all of these other aspects. Isn't that what we do?
all,
Yeah,
but it is also environmental factors or internal factors.
exactly. And is
it's
it grass
everything.
on the field or is it
Yeah.
astroturf? And what are
Yeah.
what's the barometric pressure? Brian, this is what we do, and this is what we bring to people when they get in class. Except our focus has nothing to do with sports. It's for damaged humans.
Well,
It's for situations ripe for an ambush or an attack.
okay, I'm
That's
gonna
all.
stick. I'm gonna stick with your analogy because I think that's a perfect analogy for also where sometimes we go wrong, right? So
Yes.
not go wrong. We rely too much on one part where we say, all right, everything has to do with everything. Now, not all of it's weighted equally, but it's all connected.
Yep.
So like your one brother-in-law said, all right, hey, I know by this many times at bat. Every single, he could go down
Yep.
every data point, right? Because data is important, but it doesn't tell the whole story, right? To go, this is
Exactly.
what happened. So likely based on this, this is going to be the outcome. But then, your other brother-in-law comes in and goes, well, you know what? But that was different because that's usually when it's sunny out and it's raining and the temperature
Exactly.
dropped. And remember, he said his favorite uncle died last week, and he talked about it on the news conference. And so
Yep.
you're bringing in all of these different factors to go, what's likely going to occur at this place, and you're going, there's no way you could do it. Like, well, no, you can, because all of that does
And you can get real close, dude, because a
yes.
lot of people make billions on it, but you can also have all of the right information and error. You can make a mistake, of course. I get that. People, listen, when I was briefing at the Pentagon, I can't say who it was, but the person came up and says, can you give me just a very simple algorithm? And I said, yes. I said, Apple plus lawn chair equals tuba.
Yeah, and you got
You
it
get
right.
what I'm trying to say? And I could be right every time, because that's a great thing about chaos, baby. Is it we can find the order in the chaos, but that could change tomorrow. So you have to be skilled. You have to be adept at seeing it in the moment and determining which is most likely and which is most dangerous. It's that simple. And this kid reached out, and there was something in the tone, in the way, in the light, in the color on that day, in the
Yeah.
message that they were saying, that he said close enough, and his brain chemistry gave him the woo woo, and that's the group he joined. It could have been so different a day before, a day after. It could have been so different for an intervention from a mentor or a coach, but he didn't have it at that time. And
So
somebody out there is going to say, is there just people that are a bad seed? Yeah, again, statistically insignificant, but it happens. Dennis Rader, BTK, those type
right, and so I this is kind of where I'm trying to articulate it the best way from what people say and ask questions and everything we've seen, right? Because it's knowing that difference between this kid Melzer, who contacted all these people, wanted to carry out this attack,
Yep.
And people who
That's
do
called a
carry out
rehearsal,
attacks,
folks.
yeah,
Yep.
and people who do carry out attacks,
Yep.
what's how do we tell that guy or girl or whatever, from the one who's just joining the group because they don't have any friends and they're just going along to get along?
Okay, so two standards.
Or do we
right
need
here.
to?
One, no, we don't.
Okay.
The idea is, what we have to do is we have to identify them, and just like a person for a cancer or a COVID victim, those people are much more likely to go on and do things. Like people are always talking about mental health. There's no link between the mental health and the violence, so don't go there and
Right. There's not
try
really.
to conflate
Yeah.
them. Yeah.
And but the term, well, and mental health could mean a lot of things, right?
Exactly.
So yeah.
So what I'm trying to say is, don't take these quantum leaps of logic. Let's go back to it. If you remember, if you drive in NASCAR at those speeds and you don't engage the safety precautions, sooner or later you're going to hit the wall at the Brickyard doing 170. You get what I'm saying? And you got a higher likelihood of dying. That's this kid. This kid is running fast and loose, so he's got a high likelihood of running into a wall.
I've actually never seen you use that many NASCAR references before. It must be something in the news that you're suddenly an expert
because
in
somebody asked me. Yeah, I know nothing about NASCAR, but the
You
news
do
is
now.
probably in the audience right now. And so AJ Johnson, he knew everything about it. And one day and 18 hours ago, we got engaged in something I won't get into, but what a horrible shit. So look, let's go back in time. 2013, not Spay War, NAVSEA at, gosh damn it, the shipyard, Navy Shipyard, 2013, Aaron Alexis.
Yeah.
So we take a look at Aaron
and shot up. He worked there. He came in and shot a bunch of people.
Everybody listening right now, shame on you, because that's all you know about it. Get Wikipedia and throw it off of your desktop and start studying stuff. So let's rewind, Brian, to Aaron Alexis. So Aaron Alexis is in Anchorage, Alaska, or gosh darn, JBLM, Washington.
Seattle,
Yeah, it's Seattle,
Tacoma,
Washington.
Washington. Yeah, whatever.
So
Yeah.
it's Seattle, Tacoma, SeaTac. He's up in that area, and he gets arrested because he has such an uber violent blackout that he shoots up the person's car that he's arguing with, blows out all the 4 tires on the car. He's in Texas. I thought it was Houston. But again, I do my homework, but this is spontaneous, folks, so blow me. But he's in Texas, and as he's in Texas, he gets arrested for shooting within the city limits during an argument. Okay, how bad you got to shoot up Texas before they take you to jail? Because that's like a good evening in Houston. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So then he gets to Atlanta, Georgia, and think about the places that we're talking about. He gets to Atlanta, Georgia, and he gets arrested for disorderly conduct. He happens to be carrying a gun. All of this is water under the bridge because he finally gets a security clearance, and nobody, noticed these things that had with the gun. But don't look at that, because Aaron Alexis, like your Meltzer kid, was gonna find a place to land. So all of a sudden, he's got a job and he's working at the Navy shipyards, and his bizarre behavior increases. He writes the FBI and the local police and says, "I'm hearing voices," and he tells the local police that, listen, I have every reason to believe that people are following me and that they're reading my brainwaves. Okay, Brian, that's a mental illness issue, a mental health issue that didn't get worked on because everybody was like, yeah, thanks for the report, hit the road. Now, this manifests itself in a number of different ways, but maybe never was going to go to violence. But now all of a sudden, he's an outcast because people are going, dude, you're acting really weird. So instead of embracing it and trying to get him help or telling somebody, they ostracize him. They push him outside of the group. Well, that might be that environmental trigger. So he starts staying in hotels and bouncing around the hotels because he can't stay in one too long because they're onto him. Do you get what I'm saying? He sells his car and now changes rental cars every 4 or 5 days. Brian, that's a 911 call, okay? What they do with the information after that, this is important stuff. He goes and tries to buy a gun. 3 different places let him shoot the AR, but he can't buy the AR because of a bunch of different factors in his history that apparently the DOD missed. So he buys a shotgun, which you can go to Walmart and buy a shotgun, baby, saws off the barrel, etches stuff into the side of the wood stock and onto the weapon. Brian, people saw that. People heard him talking about these things, and they did nothing. And then guess what? He decides to, bring your kid to work, but his kid is a REM 870, and he shoots people like it's a contest, okay? Everybody looks at that, and that incident for them started when Aaron Alexis pulled a gun and started shooting.
Right.
That started when Aaron Alexis was in the womb, and every spider web, that went out that happened to him, and nobody cared. NBC, nobody was reading the cues. Brian, when the writing's on the wall, you got to read it. If you can't read it, get an interpreter. And that interpreter might be a phone call to the suicide hotline. We don't do our homework. We don't study our history. And when all of these things are in our face because they don't matter to my immediate survival, we turn a blind eye. That's what we got to fix, and training fixes that.
Yeah, and the point of it, it doesn't matter to my immediate survival is important, right? Because we don't, we pick and choose what we think affects us, regardless of how it actually affects us, right?
Ego
so
driven.
There's real threats versus perceived threats. There's hey, this is really an emotional thing versus a perceived really emotional thing. And there's a lot that influences the way we feel about that stuff, right? So you can break down some of this stuff in a very systematic clinical approach to it, or some people can sensationalize it, and then now it takes on a whole new meaning. And I think that's important for what I'm getting at, meaning is that it's hard for us to see this stuff sometimes because, like you just said, well, it doesn't seem immediate or emergent to my brain right now. And then so I don't place any value on whatever I'm seeing about these changes in behavior in an individual. So then when it comes time or something actually takes place, that's why you always get the, actually, now that you mention it, he did this, this,
exactly.
and this, and this. I mean, once that investigation occurs, first everyone.
Jeffrey Dahmer?
Everyone's I had no idea. He was such a nice guy. He was a great neighbor. And then the investigation occurs. And then even those people are like, come to mention it. Oh, yeah, that's right. He did. I thought it was a little odd, but we don't ever take those things that seem a little odd and do anything with it sometimes. We just explain it away or denial. And whenever we do that, right, that's now we now have a new baseline, and now, oh, it's just this. So now when it becomes
It's
so
actually
extreme,
destructive, isn't it?
we
Yes.
don't even
Yes.
see it when it's so obvious, where someone from
Yes.
the outside would go, what the F is that dude doing? And you're going, oh, that's what he always does. And someone has to sit there and go, no, that's not okay.
Because
And
we assimilate, and we can't.
yeah.
So we look at John Wayne Gacy, and we're fascinated by that, because it's this one person, a very, very, very small segment of society that does that kind of stuff, and it fascinates us. We'll eat the popcorn no matter how many times they put a special on John Gacy, we'll tune in. But 20 flipping veterans killed themselves overnight, and guess what? It doesn't make a good TV show. So the things that inhibit us from acting on things, Brian: lack of immediate impact to my survival,
Yeah.
challenge to my ego view, my egotistical, view of myself and what I'm capable of and what I'm available of. And some things are scary. Nighttime is scary. Dark is scary, and I don't want to see it. So everybody says we got to do something about the suicide, and there are tangible factors that can be read from the outside if people are trained to say this person is much more likely to commit suicide. So everything has a structure, Brian, and access is the key. If you have access, like for example, just in suicide, you're likely to hurt yourself. That's access, right? But if you have access to a weapon, that number goes up. And it doesn't matter the weapon, the tool, the implement, Brian, could be pills or alcohol. Do you get what I'm trying to say? So each time that I add something to that cup where access was involved, okay, and I don't have an outlet, a safe outlet for that, something's going to happen. What was this kid's safe outlet, Brian? He's reaching out on the internet to Al-Qaeda. How do you do that? Do you go Al-Qaeda, Joe Qaeda, Bill Qaeda? Hey, here he is. How the hell would you find it? And you know my vast knowledge of the internet and social media.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be able to find it. That meant that somebody else watched, somebody knew, somebody told the kid. All the signs are on the table. We don't read the tea leaves very well. We have to be trained and shown how to do that.
Right. And in this specific case with this kid in the Army, obviously he was arrested prior to everything, so they picked up on it. And that's why I said I didn't get a chance to deep dive the stories and the investigations of what was the initial call to an investigator to come take a look. So I don't know what it is, but it was obviously so powerful and enough that everyone could see it. And the problem with it is those obvious ones, yeah, they're easy to spot and people can tell and anyone go, but they're not always that obvious usually, right?
Yeah.
Most of these folks that they carry out, I mean, even with school shooters and different, TJ Lane keeps coming to mind.
Yeah.
But
perfect example.
It's always there, but it gets a little bit harder to tell sometimes.
I don't think so. I think what it is, I think people are confused thinking that it's hard.
Yes.
Let me give you an example. If a white guy comes up to you, Brian, and says, hey, I want to buy a bag of dope. Okay. And let's talk cocaine because marijuana is legal everywhere, including within our company. But the idea is that, let's say we're talking about cocaine, heroin, or something. I want a bundle of heroin. Okay. You sell the guy a bundle, and he comes back an hour later and goes, I need a bundle of heroin. Then he comes back and says, I need an 8-ball. Then 4 hours later, he comes back and needs an ounce. You're dealing with a DEA agent. Get out now. Okay. It doesn't, but your brain chemistry, Brian.
I know. I'm going.
Screaming, damn, G.
So
I'm selling all this shit. Do you understand what's going on?
The whole time I'm sitting here, I'm going, this guy's a cop. He's a fed. Why would you come in there and buy all that?
People told me, people are buying from me, or I'm buying from them, and they look and they go, damn, you look like a cop. And I go, yep, Jack Lord, Hawaii 5-0, baby. You're under arrest. And we'd laugh and laugh, and here goes more and more drug. So even though smoking is bad for you, it can lead to cancer and kill you, you're going to do it. And speeding and renting a car and driving through Aspen on icy roads, even though you've never done it. Why? Because the pleasure center of our brain makes us stupid sometimes. So we see these things happening, and we just don't have time in our day to slow our roll and take a look and go, I think Brian's having a bad day. I think that PTSD is getting to him. If we would open our eyes, Brian, and we would give ourselves a gift of time and distance, we'd notice so much more in our environment, and those environmentals are what are screaming to us that something's wrong with Jimmy. So right now somebody's going, oh, he knows Jimmy. No, anybody, Jimmy, Susie, whatever, the broken snowflake in your world.
No, and another thing, and this gets into, I don't want to change it completely but it kind of gets into boundaries, right? What people
absolutely
learn and test and then push their boundaries. And
we're doing that as a society right now, Brian, outside of our podcast.
We're definitely testing our boundaries, and a lot of people are pushing too.
So first we learn, then we test, then we push. And that's a natural growth. Uh, Brian, someone right now on Facebook is wondering why their teenage son or daughter is a complete ass. They have to be.
They have to be.
Because you need to push them out of the nest so they can go build their little community. It's like civilization builder in Empire Earth. You get what I'm saying? Plebs are needed. You got to push that guy out there to build something, because if he doesn't build, there's not going to be any growth. If they don't go away from the home, they're not going to breed. So these are things, these are preconditioned into us as humans, Brian. And guess what? If a toaster can go wrong, okay, and a toaster's got what, 9 parts? What do you think is going on with some humans? One, it's very rare. So therefore, when you do see it, you got to take action. You said TJ Lane. TJ Lane told every one of those kids, one day I'm going to come to school with the gun and I'm going to shoot you assholes. And guess what, Brian? He did it. So it was so violent that they put him in a special section of class. But they violated their own protocol because they only had one bus to take him to that school. So everybody ate cafeteria in the same place. And not one of those folks, not one of those parents, school administrators, anybody else said, hey, let's search this kid's bag once in a while. Or, hey, it might be dangerous. Let's let him have breakfast at home, Brian. They forced the situation. Then they were surprised at the outcome. And Einstein said something about that, didn't he? When you repeat the same behavior over and over, right, and expect a different outcome? Come on.
Well, and so I kind of got to collect myself for a second here, because
if PTSD is hitting you this morning, eh? Sure.
Well, the idea is with
look in the box, Brian. I know you want to.
It's this goes back into, people get wrapped around then. Well, what do I look for? What am I supposed to do? Or what am I supposed to say? And again, this goes into say, it's not what to look for. It's how to look, right?
Exactly.
How to understand things in your environment, which takes a lot. And I know it's, you always say, oh, it's get thee to training. That's which, of course, that's a if you see something, say something, right? It's another platitude, but it's not in the sense that we do human behavior pattern recognition and analysis. Most people can do some bit of human behavior pattern recognition, right? We all got that. We go, oh yeah, analysis, I saw that there. Baby. Yeah. Yep. It's just, if you don't have that framework for that analysis, and that sometimes, so what's a low calorie way? Because you brought up a bunch of examples. One, your kid being an ass when they're a teenager, the coworker all of a sudden changing behavior. I got a family friend that all of a sudden is possibly suicidal. I have, I think this coach is being a little too close with the kids or something. You get what I'm saying? So
yeah.
how not to bring up something personal. But,
okay, I'm a coach, damn it. No, Mary,
but meaning what you're telling me.
Let me answer by this. Yeah. Do you know what this is? Hold on.
It's a yellow pad.
And this. Okay.
That's
the external hard drive. By the way, that's Shelly gave me a Valentine a long time ago.
There's a sticker on there that looks odd.
But that's my external drive. Okay. This and this are the projects I'm working on this morning. So this is within arm's reach, and I've got a red pen and I've got a black pen. And Brian, I epitomize absolutely everything. I put things in writing. I make myself notes. I go, why is this way? And then I seek it out and I search it out. You've traveled with me exclusively for at least 10 years, and you know how many times in a day do I stop whatever we're doing and go over and start talking to somebody and ask them questions? Yeah. Okay. So do I also take photos with the shoe phone everywhere that I go?
This is a lot of calories.
Yeah, I get it, but it's not a lot of calories. Anybody that's watching, all you've got to do is pay a little special attention to those things closest around you first. For example, okay, we don't take time to walk into the city market to drive around the parking lot before we choose a place to park. We don't take time when we walk in to go, hey, is that cordite and sulfur that I smell when I'm going into the 7-Eleven? We've conditioned ourselves that everything is fine and almost nothing is going to kill us, which is the truth. But every year people get hit by lightning. Every year people get bit by sharks. And every year some teenager drinks himself to death when he's trying to get pledged to a frat or something.
Yeah.
What we have to do is we have to say, these things are important enough in my environment to compare them against the baseline. The danger is always going to be in incongruent signals, and the danger is always going to be above and below the baseline. The only time that danger can be baseline related is Ebola. It's a be on the lookout for a specific item. And that's rare too, Brian. So instead of coming up with this laminated list of 11 flippant things to do, I would tell you that all incongruent behavior in your environment has to be investigated. If one tire is lower than the other, your car's not going to
Well,
perform as well.
and
If a warning light is on your dashboard,
yeah,
Brian, you got to do it,
but
or you're going to run out of gas or have an engine failure before you get to work.
so even with that, all of those, any anomalous behavior can be explained, meaning it can be. There has to be a reason why that nail was sticking up, right? So
I
meaning
agree.
it
In
can't,
principle.
it can be explained, or there has to be a reason for it. Things just don't happen, for no reason, right?
Yes.
This mess, my piles of notes didn't, get this big because I was staying on top of it.
Look at all those yellow pads in the background.
Well,
Folks.
it was because I
Yeah.
fell behind and I have to type up my stuff and do it. And
Yep.
what happens after that? Well, then the next thing, then I end up leaving my drink up here, which I never do at the end of the
Yep.
day. And then I
Yep.
do that. Why? Because it's just that, well, that entropy takes over, but
Yep.
one thing leads to the next. So if you walked in here right now, you go, man, this guy's kind of a mess, but you wouldn't have a week ago when I had gone through everything, it was clean, it was organized, and so
what happened?
MLMD
What
COA.
was the catalyst,
Yeah,
Brian? And that's
exactly
what we have to identify. That catalyst, that pre-event indication by itself is meaningless. But when it
Right.
starts forming a constellation and more of them started fixing themselves to them naturally, not forced, okay? That's putting a round peg into a square hole. Then we have to stand back and go, I can explain this away, but I don't want to be the victim of denial. So instead of doing that, I'm going to take a knee, and not the Kaepernick knee. I'm going to take a knee. I'm going to take a look at the situation, and I'm going to do a gosh damn explanatory storyline. This is most likely benign, and it's probably just due to Brian coming off the wagon again, drinking too much. It was his birthday a month ago. He's still celebrating. Okay, but what if it's not? And what if this is that catalyst that Greg was talking about on that podcast? Brian, you see how simple that is? If it's above or below the baseline or exactly the thing you're looking for, take 30 seconds and go, Jim, what's going on today? Here we back to Jim. Jane, why are you having this problem? Hey, Hank, I noticed that you got a rental car. Everything okay at home? Do you see what I'm trying to say, Brian? It's literally that simple. Because what am I doing? Every time I propose that question, every time I call somebody in my office, every time I ask my kid why they're cutting, okay, that's throwing a rock in the pond to see where the ripples go. Most of the time, ripple goes out, hits a lily pad, the frog jumps, the bird flies, and everybody goes pretty bird. The problem is we got to wind that tape back, Brian, and take another look. We got to see what was that. Yeah, and we all know who that was. Right? That bastard.
We all know who that was.
I think I sent you that video one time on what he was throwing a rock at too.
But again, you hit it right there, and that's what we get to a lot when we talk about this in class with people, and just understanding when we have these conversations about human behavior in general, is there's always a catalyst, there's a reason for change, and that can go into whatever. That's from the person,
environmental trigger.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It's the person who's been overweight their whole life, and then goes, you know what, I got to do something about it, and loses a whole bunch.
It can be a great thing.
But that's what I'm saying. There's a catalyst. There's a reason.
Yes.
You don't just wake up and just decide to completely, I'm going to buy all new clothes today and get a different job and do that. That doesn't happen.
So even the person losing weight, you go up to that person, and instead of going, what's on your mind or what's on your heart, you go, hey, looks like you've been losing weight. Okay. Now there's a fork in the road, Brian, because losing weight because there's problems at home, or losing weight because you want to improve your, self-view. Do you get what I'm saying? You just want to be
Or
healthy.
are you training for something?
Yeah. So
like that's the whole point.
So ask.
And
somebody's going to tell you right now, HR is ringing in, no, you can't ask that. Dude, can't ask that. Expect your business to get shot up, because that's the weight. We are humans. Listen, everybody that's built a bomb talked about building that bomb. That's how they got caught. Everybody, this kid, before he did the event, he not only was typing about it, he was telling his friends about it. Listen, we need to get that out. It's like that steam kettle, Brian, on that oven. When it's heating up, we got that's at the top. But if we take the whistle off, we're never going to know until it boils over and we come in and it's all dented and emaciated. So you have a responsibility to take care of yourself, which includes the community of people that you run with in that environment that you run with. So that's why you should ask more questions. That's why you should be probative. That's why you should drive around the building before you walk in the morning. You are responsible for your own well-being.
No, and that falls into, how we tend to, or a lot of people tend to focus on the different reasons of why people fall into these groups and do this. And there's, you can go back through how they were raised and the biological reasons. And that's all good.
Makes
right?
a
And
good book. Yeah.
what it should do is help inform how we deal with this much earlier in life with people. If we have all these identifications of oh, this is how it occurred, well, what are we doing with that information? That's a problem, is no one ever uses that information, right? They
But we
just
don't. You're
talk about it,
exactly right.
sell a book, and go on the flipping news and talk about
Yep.
it. It
And now
does
you're a
nothing.
talking head and
And
everybody loves you.
they don't put in the prevent indicators, one, because it doesn't tell you what to look for or how to prevent the next attack. None of those books do. And they're not using it to inform maybe some type of policy or some societal reason of, hey, this is the issue we need to address at babies when
legal,
they're
moral,
born
ethical,
under these
reasonable.
3 conditions, that they're in the highest category. So why don't we put our extra resources as a society to them when they're very young? But we don't do that, because we go, well, everyone's the same and we don't want to judge and we
Which is
can't
not
do
true.
this.
So
And it's
let's
not
roll
true.
it
Well,
forward.
none of that's true. We all judge and we're all different. So
let's roll it forward and give you an example of that same kid, Brian. So I know you're an expert witness on Jeffrey Dahmer. So let's go to Dahmer. And I'm going to give you 2 choices, Brian, and I would ask everybody out at home to play along here. So choice number 1 is that when the victim of Jeffrey Dahmer runs out naked, wearing one handcuff into the snow on the street, right, and runs smack dab into a couple of cops, and he doesn't speak English, and he's bleeding from the rectum, and begging them for help. And Dahmer comes out just seconds later, and Dahmer, because he's a predator and he's in predator mode and he's got the rap, he's got confidence,
high
man.
level
That's where we get the con, and low level of sophistication, right? So he perfect storm, a bad guy. Is it more likely to believe that he was so convincing to those cops who even came up to the room, or do you believe that those cops hadn't been trained and therefore were like, those drunk kids, they're going to go back up and buggery? The idea, Brian, I don't know why I raised the inflection on that, because it was interesting to me too. Rum, a bum, and backy, as Martin would say. Yeah. So I was thinking of Norm Macdonald for some reason right there when he was in jail in that scene of Dirty Work, which was dirty, by the way. But no, go back to that. So you either want to believe that Dahmer was so manipulative in his environment and his victims that he talked those cops out of it, who even came up to his room and looked around his room, and there was another victim he's dismembered laying on his bed in another room.
There's a dead body in the bedroom.
They were following a procedure. They were going, here we go again. It's a busy Saturday night. These guys are up to no good. But you know what? In the greater scheme of things, Brian, I will tell you that those clues are apparent to everybody. And we choose, because our brain chemistry isn't tuned into them, we choose to look away and let it go. Training will change that. That's all I'm saying. I'm a huge proponent of training. I don't give a shit if you go to us. We're doing this for free. How much impact are we making in your life? If it's good, get somebody else on the call. But the idea is that imagine what you'll learn in class, because we do part task and training and practical application to make sure that you see this in your environment. And you're going to say, Brian, why isn't everybody doing it? Because everybody loves booting doors and ramming cars and shooting all the weapon systems. Nobody wants to invest in brain training.
I think that's hopefully changing, but I think it's just some takeaways, I think, for anyone listening or watching us now live too.
Sorry for the buggery, or maybe not.
That's not
maybe we embrace it.
It's not the takeaway I was going to go with,
I'm
but
sorry,
it can be. I have no problem with. I have no
problem. Put that on the website, folks.
So no, the idea is a couple of things. Right, we all talk about it. There's prevent indicators all the time. All right, so we don't always see them for a number of reasons, but let's stick to the insider threat and lack of identity. There are people that are looking for a place to land.
Yes.
You can identify that. You can see
might
that.
Be you or your kid.
Yes, but you can see that when you're looking for somewhere to belong in. So when that person is identified, let's get them to the right group to be along, right? To be belonged to. So that's one way to look at it. Another thing is, again, because we're talking about a broad topic and we only have an hour or so to do it, it's generalizations, right? So there's always a catalyst for someone to change their behavior. There has to be something, some reason for you to all of a sudden change the way you're doing things. Now, I'm not saying whether that's good or bad. It could be either one. It could be something really great. It could be something horrible. You could be going to do something that's benefiting you and the community, everyone, or that could be something that's going to be detrimental to you and the community, everyone, whatever it is. But either way, there's always a reason for that change. So if I can identify what that reason was by a little bit of investigation or talking or asking to someone, that's going to give me the insight into what their intent is and what their reason for that behavioral change is.
Spot on. And Brian, you wanted a low-cal intervention, and I've said it 1,000 times before to 10,000 of our clients. Brian, look them in the eye and go, what's on your mind? If it's an emotional event, say, dude, what's on your heart? Or ma'am, what's on your heart? Let them explode verbally on you right then, rather than explode by yelling something and pulling the ripcord in a crowded marketplace. Come on.
Yeah. Okay. I think, do you want to add anything else here at the end of this?
Bridget's birthday. I think we've insulted every hate group. I think that's plenty.
Well, this might escalate quickly. That was a lot of hate groups that we.
A lot of hate went on. No,
but it was towards hate groups, and apparently that's okay.
Colfax Motor Lodge on July 4th. Come see us.
If that's a real place, I hope.
I don't even know. But I know
someone's going to show up there, though.
Someone will be standing around the building.
Hey, where are those guys? They're going to be sending us an email from the parking lot.
You show up, we'll be there.
All right, everyone. Thanks so much for tuning in. Please, if you like it, share it with your friends. Leave us a review on the podcast, Left of Greg podcast, for those watching that don't know what this is. But hey, just give us a thumbs up, give us a star rating, share it with your friends, follow us on social media. It really helps out a lot getting the message out there.
It really does.
We get hit up all the time from people going, "Oh my gosh, and this is what I was looking for. Hey, where did this?" And so there are other people out there interested. So if you're not, just share it with someone who might be. But
if you're a member of a hate group, Brian Marin's home address
stop
will be on the website.
Stop. So please, the hate groups. Hey, listen along. You might learn something new. Maybe
exactly.
we'll bring you back.
The feds are.
Yeah, exactly. So, all right, everyone. On that, I think we'll end it. Appreciate everyone tuning in. Don't forget
Happy Thursday.
Training changes behavior.